Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something that affects almost everyone. We're breaking down the biggest money mistake 90% of people make, and more importantly, how you can avoid it. It's this crazy paradox of modern wealth. Society constantly tells us that the answer to all our financial problems is just to go out and make more money. But what if, for the vast majority of people, earning more actually leads to having less? Well, let's jump right into exactly why that happens and how we can flip the script.
Honestly, take a second and just imagine this. Imagine earning twice as much as you're making right now, but still struggling to pay your bills every single month. I mean, it sounds like a bad joke, right? But this isn't fiction. Millions of people are living this exact reality every single day. And the crazy part, they aren't broke because they don't earn enough. They're broke because they're unknowingly making one critical, silent financial mistake that's just quietly stealing their future. So today, we're going to uncover exactly what that mistake is and lay out the blueprint to escape it.
All right, part one, meet David and the income trap. To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at a pretty classic example. So David just landed his very first real job. That first real paycheck hits his bank account, and wow, the feeling is absolutely electric. Naturally, he wants to celebrate. He goes out, buys some nice new clothes, upgrades to the absolute newest smartphone, rents a much pricier apartment, and finances a shiny newer car. As he's swiping his card, he's telling himself a very common but incredibly dangerous little lie. Hey, I work hard, I deserve it.
Now, fast forward a bit and let's track David's career trajectory over the next 10 years. In year 1, he's at his starting salary, doing fine. By year 5, he scores a promotion and his salary literally doubles. Awesome, right? Then, by year 10, he's up in management and his original income has tripled. On paper, David is absolutely crushing it as a high earner. But if we look just a little bit closer at his underlying financial reality, something is seriously wrong. Because strangely enough, his actual savings account, it doesn't grow at all. It stays completely flat.
And here is where the real problem kicks in. Even though his income is just skyrocketing, his debts are climbing right alongside it. The car payments are way bigger, the mortgage is massive, and those credit card bills are higher than ever. His stress is through the roof, and ironically, his happiness is dropping. He basically feels trapped by the exact things he bought to reward himself. So, I've got to ask you, how on earth can someone earn more and more money every single year, yet never actually become wealthy?
Well, the hidden enemy here is something called lifestyle inflation. And this right here is the biggest money mistake 90% of people make. Lifestyle inflation is this sneaky psychological trap where every single salary increase immediately creates bigger expenses. You get a raise and suddenly that old car just isn't good enough anymore. You get a bonus and you instantly need to book a luxury vacation. Basically, your standard of living inflates to perfectly match your new income, which means the gap between what you earn and what you actually keep, it never widens.
Think about the contrast here. Back when David had his old, lower salary, he had relatively small expenses. And you know what? He managed just fine. But when he transitioned to that higher salary, he didn't bump up his savings. That higher salary just translated directly into bigger loans, way higher interest payments, and a luxury lifestyle. So his income went up, sure, but his actual wealth stayed perfectly flat. It's like he's just running faster and faster on a treadmill, sweating to stay in the exact same spot.
Okay, part 2. Let's shift gears and meet Sarah, the asset builder. Let's contrast David's story with our second character. And here's the really fascinating part. Sarah actually earns significantly less than David does. Her salary is lower, but she operates with a totally different mindset. Instead of upgrading her lifestyle every single time she gets a small raise, she focuses heavily on financial literacy. She prioritizes saving, and most importantly, she focuses on buying assets instead of liabilities. The diverging paths here are just incredibly stark. David's path is all about visible consumption, right? Upgrading the lifestyle, taking up bigger loans, basically trying to look wealthy to everyone else. Sarah's path, on the other hand, is practically invisible from the outside. She drives a modest, totally reliable car and lives in a comfortable but very affordable home. But behind the scenes? Oh, she's investing. She's buying assets, things like index funds or real estate that actually put money back into her pocket every single month instead of things that just drain it. So let's fast forward that exact same decade for her. We already know David is stressed out and heavily in debt despite his massive salary. But what about Sarah? 10 years later, even though David earns almost twice as much as she does on paper, Sarah has a significantly larger net worth. She has peace of mind, she has security, and she has options. And it all comes down to truly understanding the fundamental mechanics of how wealth actually works, completely independent of how big your paycheck is. Which brings us to part 3, the mechanics of wealth. To really grasp this concept, I absolutely love using this analogy because it just makes the math so visual and easy to get. Think of your money exactly like water, and your wealth is a bucket. Your income, whether that's from your 9-to-5, a side hustle, or a business, is simply the water that you're actively pouring into the top of that bucket.
But here's the catch. What happens if your bucket has holes in the bottom? These bucket holes have a devastating financial impact. You've got impulse buying draining your cash, completely useless monthly subscriptions creating the steady, quiet leak, luxury purchases wiping out your savings, and high-interest debt just eating away at your future income. If your bucket is full of these holes, it mathematically does not matter how much water you pour in. David tried to fix his money problems by pouring more water in, but his holes were just way too big. Sarah? She focused on plugging the holes first.
Part 4, the mango trees. Because look, once you actually plug those holes, then you can start building real wealth. And that brings us to one of the most powerful forces in the entire universe. Let's just step away from the spreadsheets for a second. Imagine you want to harvest mangoes, so you decide you're going to plant a mango tree. Now imagine you have 2 trees. You plant tree number 1 today. For tree number 2, you wait and plant it 10 years from now. When you fast forward another 20 years, which tree is going to produce a massive, continuous harvest of fruit? The first one, obviously, because it had the time to establish incredibly deep roots. Well, money works exactly the same way. The earlier you plant your financial seeds, the harder your money works for you. Sarah planted her trees in year 1. David is 10 years in, and he hasn't even bought the seeds yet.
And this brings us right to the practical wealth building blocks that Sarah used to get so far ahead. First, budgeting. It isn't a restriction. It actually creates freedom by telling your money exactly where to go. Emergency funds? They protect you from life's disasters. Investing is crucial because it beats inflation, unlike just saving. Buying assets is what generates that sweet passive income. Delaying gratification ensures you don't trade what you want most for what you just want right now. And above all else, consistency beats perfection. You don't need to be a Wall Street genius, guys. You just have to be incredibly consistent over time.
Part 5, the turning point. Let's bring this all back to David for a minute. So, after a decade of high earnings and super high stress, he finally hits a breaking point. That treadmill is just exhausting. And it's right here that he ends up having a conversation with an older, happily retired man who has lived a very comfortable, totally debt-free life. David asks the guy for his secret, fully expecting to hear about some complex stock market strategy or some secret career hack.
But the older man simply looks at him and drops this truth bomb. You don't become rich because you earn a lot. You become rich because you keep what you earn and make it work for you. Man, it hits David like a ton of bricks. He suddenly realizes the fatal flaw of his lifestyle inflation. He has spent years waking up early, sitting in miserable traffic, and working incredibly hard for money, instead of doing exactly what Sarah did, which is making his money work hard for him.
So how do we actually apply this? How do you and I escape the trap? Here are 5 steps to freedom that you can literally start today. Number 1, track every single expense. You can't plug the holes in your bucket if you don't know where they are. Number 2, save before spending. Always pay yourself first. Number 3, protect your progress by building up a solid emergency fund. Number 4, invest consistently. Go plant those mango trees early. And number 5, continue learning. Financial literacy really is a lifelong journey.
If there's one absolute crucial takeaway from this explainer, it's this. One smart decision today can completely change your entire financial future. So many people mistakenly think that becoming wealthy has to start with earning a bigger paycheck. It absolutely doesn't. It starts with thinking differently. It starts with actively rejecting lifestyle inflation. The richest people in the world don't necessarily work harder than everyone else. They just make vastly better financial decisions every single day.
Which leads us to our final, incredibly powerful thought. Money is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. When you inflate your lifestyle and find yourself drowning in debt, money becomes your master. It dictates how you live, where you have to work, and how much stress you have to carry around. But when you control your spending and start buying assets, money becomes your servant, working tirelessly in the background to buy back your time and your freedom. So, I'm going to leave you with this. Are you going to take control of your financial destiny, or are you going to let your money master you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really challenge you to make that one smart decision today.